And finally, those words might resonate with some of you who are my age. But and finally was what the newsreader would say at the end of that broadcast. No matter what was happening in the world, famine, war, politics, they would tap their papers and they would say, and finally, and they would end with a good news story. A duck's given birth to 6 pink ducklings. Birmingham City won the Premiership. Oh, okay, I'm going a bit ahead of myself. But they'd finish with a good news story. So no matter what happened, we peaked. You see, I wanted to know, why did it stop? Because they don't do it anymore. They do not do it anymore. So in order for us to go forward, we have to go back. I'm going to introduce you to a lady. We had nothing in common. I was a son of an economic migrant father, Jamaican father, an Irish mother. This lady was on my TV when I was at primary school, when we used to have 3 channels. Complaining, lobbying, writing. They used to make fun of her and said that she was crazy, that she was getting in the way when we had 3 channels. Yes, I'm talking about Mary Whitehouse. Upper middle class, conservative, not necessarily I agreed with the politics, but the message from the 60s was clear. So like I said, in order for us to go forward, we have to go back. So what I want you to do, and it's going to be painful for some of you, I want you to go back to 1991. Some of you in here weren't born. Some of you had really dodgy hairstyles. Some of you thought you were in love, but actually you weren't. Some of you were at university. Some of you may have been in prison. 1991, this is a key year for the reality of youth violence in the UK. So here goes. Let's look at 1991 in South Central LA. This film came out. Now, by show of hands, who's seen this film? Okay, about 50%. So let's break it down for those who haven't. On the right here, you have the gentleman known as Ice Cube. So in the film, he's portrayed as a gang member, violent lifestyle, etc. In the middle, you have a young man who's part of his peer group, but called Cuba Gooding Jr., the actor Cuba Gooding Jr. He's in this kind of third space where he understands the complexities of inner city life, but he also has a strong male role model father. To the left, okay, your left, you have Ice Cube's brother in the film, who just receives a scholarship to go university, but he's also a young father. He gets murdered in the film. Anyone who watched that film in 1991 looked at it and thought, what is going on in LA? Because that wasn't our reality here in the UK. I watched the film recently again, on the way back on a train journey, and I'm happy to share this with you. I shed a tear because I realized that is part of our reality now here in the UK. Let me prove it to you. So let's take a look at the charts in the UK in 1991. Okay, first one might be problematic. Iron Maiden, Bring Your Daughter to the Slaughter. Second one, Enigma, Sadness Part 1. Now, all of you that were in those student nights, you know who you were. You know what that song is. Okay, Queen, Innuendo. KLF featuring the Children, 3 AM Eternal. The Simpsons, Do the Bartman. Clash, Should I Stay or Should I Go? Hale and Pace, The Stunk. Oh, hold on, we found a gangster. Okay, Chesney Hawkes. Yeah, the original gangster. Okay. Then we've got Cher, Colour Me Bad. Hold on. And I know some of you gentlemen had him on your wall. It's okay, you've got through that now. Okay, Jason Donovan. And then we go on Bryan Adams, U2, Vic Reeves, The Wonder Stuff, Michael Jackson, George Michael and Elton John. We didn't have young men with high-velocity weapons, teenagers killing each other in the UK in 1991. We had armed robberies, we had football hooligans, but we didn't have inner-city gangs. And I'm happy to be challenged on that. So I wanted to know why and how. And there's multiple reasons. But today, we're going to explore one key element. Anyone, by show of hands, got children in here? Put your hands up, please. Okay, or grandchildren. Who's familiar with that channel? Okay, about 20%. So my age group, you know, we ran home from school, we watched Thundercats and Dungeons and Dragons, etc. Now you've got this channel, Tiny Pop. So some of the cartoons on Tiny Pop. You've got Just in Time, great cartoon. He goes around the world, he engages different cultures, he learns, he shares, he's about diversity. Millie Molly. In my research, because he's the book plug for Murder Media, Millie Molly's a great cartoon. Two different young people sharing each other's values, knowing that they're different, but they've got a lot in common. Third cartoon, Timothy Goes to School. Okay, yeah, got some fans in the audience. Timothy Goes to School, talks about his peer group, forgiveness, restorative justice. If you look deep enough, you see the lessons that these cartoons teach the young people. And we're talking, when we say young people, we're talking 3 to 6. So the cartoon comes to an end, and it's break time, advertisements, and they advertise an album. Does that 3-year-old get up and make a cup of tea? Do they? You see, this is the thing. No parent would feed their child poison purposely unless that parent had massive problems. And what I want to say to you here is we have to reflect as a society, as a community, what we're feeding our children. Let's go back, because clearly we're not getting this. Within 2 seconds. By show of hands, tell me if you've played or are aware of this game. Everyone, hands up, keep them up high. Look around, people in the room, keep your hands up high if you've played this game. None of you have. Read it again. You see, I do these things in the lab at night, like a mad professor. I go into primary schools. I do exactly the same test with the children, 7 to 11 years old. Like you, they put their hands up. So I go, who's played this game? And they all go, sick! Subtext, if you don't know what sick means, look for someone young around you and they'll do it in the vernacular. Okay? That's not a problem for me. So I say, okay, put your hands down. Now put your hands up. Whose parents bought it them? The same amount of hands go up. That's the problem. And what's this game about? Because I guarantee none of you have ever seen the bottom right-hand corner of my arm here, your left. Mature 17. Interestingly, the spike in absences from school the day after a new game comes out is also something we need to look at. We need to look at children turning up to school tired. Yeah? 2, 3 o'clock in the morning playing these games. We need to look at the value base and the moral compass about what's happening. Because what's happening in those games, are those games about global warming and daisy picking? You can kill, you can maim, you can rob. How are these children viewing women from a very young age? The films, Birmingham, that has a history of high levels of gang violence. Did we need a film like this portraying us? We know we didn't. So when the games and the films, but we can't do this without talking about the music. Now for the sociologists in the room, you'll enjoy this. So let's take a little view into the chaos theory. To my right, your left, you have a mainstream rapper, multi-million-pound selling rapper. And here, my left, your right, you have a rock artist, well-known, mainstream, multi-platinum selling. The rock artist's listenership stroke constituency would not listen to that artist. Sorry, they will listen to it, but this is their core audience. They would listen to that artist. But his constituency would not listen to that music. His core constituency, and I know I'm generalizing and stereotyping, but here's the interesting thing. Let's look at the demographic. So when we look at the demographic of the rock artist, double incomes, 2 holidays a year, they see the same doctor, they've got a lawn, a gravel drive. The school that they're going, in year 7, they're told, get 10 A's. Let's look at the predominant demographic of those who listen to that side. Locum doctors, communities surrounded by Dixie chicken, betting offices. They're told at the same age, even though they're only 5 minutes drive from that same other school, just get 5 A to C's. But outside where they live, what else is happening? Crack, gangs. What does it lead to? Desensitization. Desensitization. So that means that really they're primed. Nothing shakes them anymore. Violence is not a problem anymore. Now here's a question, Birmingham. Why don't we have a gang in Birmingham called the Solihull Man them? Why don't we have a gang in Birmingham called the Noel Bangers? And we laugh, and I understand why we laugh. But I stopped counting, because the last time I counted, we've lost 42 young men to gang violence. That's probably 3 rows here, 42. If that had happened in those communities, we would have had the Navy, the Marines, everything, forensic scientists. There's something about violence and inequality and poverty. I'm one of those fortunate practitioners, the assistance practitioners, who works in the secure estate. And I say fortunate, and I'll tell you why I say fortunate, because I work in the adult estate, youth estate, and the children's estate. The adult estate, when I've engaged in there and I'm working with guys who are on long sentences, at the end of the day, I pack up and I leave. When in the youth offending, I pack up and I leave. I can't do that with the children's estate. Sometimes I leave at 5 in the morning, I catch a long train, I won't say where to, another long train, because I have to be in the education department for 9 a.m. And then I'll look at the sheet, and I'll look at the background of the young person. He might be in for murder, or attempted murder, 13 years old. So you can imagine when I'm about to walk into his space, what I'm thinking I'm going to see. And I walk into the room, ladies and gentlemen, and I see a child again. No conflict, no bad parenting, no gangs. I walk in the room and I see that child. And when you work in a secure estate and you see children, 12, 13 years old, some of them with 13, 15, 18-year tariffs, when you walk in there, and there's tons of messages. So recently, I saw them, and they'd had a delivery of parcels from their family. So they were all in fresh trainers, Jordans, Huaraches. If you don't know what Huaraches are, ask the young person next to you. No laces. Why no laces? To stop them from hanging themselves. It's a place of trauma. So what we see now in terms of violence is the gentrification of it. Why the gentrification? Because somebody has thought, we can make money off this. It's like the N-word. Usually I just say it in full because it probably get beeped out anyway. The N-word, the worst word you can call the black community, but the corporate industry took it away repackaged it and sold it back. Now it's dominant culture. Some might say it's a term of endearment. It's not acceptable. Can you ever imagine the worst name that you can be called based upon your ethnicity in music, in films, in games, in the playground? You can't. But it's happening. So the gentrification means our mainstream movies start to look like this. No Bambi anymore. No Watership Down. Now, some might argue that art mimics life, but that's not everybody's reality. Gang violence, gun crime, only accounts for approximately 1 to 1.5% of crime nationally. But here's the interesting thing. When we look at a social return on investment model, one shooting costs you and me, the taxpayer, 1.4 million per shooting. A stabbing costs you and me, the taxpayer, £300,000 per stabbing. And interestingly, in a post-riot era, who were the riots blamed on? The gangs. But it wasn't the gangs. And those who read and study and understand and work in the field know it wasn't the gangs. So the gentrification continues on our screens, weekly, monthly, recommissioned. And here's an interesting one. Veteran. He comes back from the war. He has to get rehoused. He suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder. He's rehoused on the estate. Guess who he bumps into in the corridor? The man them. So you've got this ex-army having a mini war with the local gang on the estate. Look at the imagery. You're right, there has to be an artistic responsibility. There has to be a level of it. There's no Mary Whitehouse anymore. Who's challenging what's coming out through the microphones, through the lenses? Who's challenging? Because ultimately it's your children, your grandchildren, your niece and your nephews who are absorbing this. There's something ironic that our generation only had 3 channels. This generation has 300. Scientists say that the average person will live to 65. We could die today, we could die 100. I hate to be real about it. But 65, if you watch TV for 4 hours a day for the whole of your life, you'd have spent 12 years in front of a screen. Do you know anyone on their gravestone wish he'd or she'd watched more TV? That's based upon TV. Look at what we all disconnected. Look at how we're disconnected. Look at what we're viewing. Interesting. Corporate responsibility. We will queue for days, but we won't phone our nan. Now you might say, Ray, for the academics, there's no empirical evidence to suggest that this is... No, you're right. There may not be no empirical evidence, but I've got some anecdotal evidence for you. Almost from the ether, we get this message from the person who created a lot of the technology. And today I've heard a lot about technology and regeneration, and you're right, used correctly, it can liberate. But is it liberating? Or is it isolating? How many of you, and I dare you to do this, next time you sit down as a family to have a meal, or sit down with your partner to have a meal, watch how many times we check our phones. And you're all looking at, partners are in here looking at each other like, I can see you. But that reminds me of this lyric from Notorious B.I.G. Steve Jobs was saying the same thing. Never get high in your own supply. Interesting, it's all connected. And while we're on the subject of BIG, we have to look at postcodism, because postcodism is the driver for a lot of the gang violence. You see, because I don't hold gang violence to be a criminal justice issue per se, I hold it to be a public health issue. Why? Why would two young men who've never met each other before, not fallen out over a girl, not falling out over money, not falling out of trading drugs, the first time they see each other, one of them pulls out a weapon, loaded weapon, and blows the other one's brains out over postcodes. And there's one part missing. Postcodes in which they both live in social housing. So I'm on the plane from Dallas to San Jose, true story. I've flown London, Dallas. I'm going to Silicon Valley to a conference. I'm in the air. For those of you who've been to America, you know this journey. I'm in the air, and it dawned upon me the vastness of that country, the flight, the length of the flight. Historically, you had these two mainstream artists, one who represented the West Coast, the other who represented the East Coast. The distance between them by plane was 6 hours. Do you know anyone who's going to book a ticket, jump on a plane, go and punch someone in the face and fly back? You don't. But the youth see the model, take it, lift it, and apply it, but they're not 6 hours apart. Could be 6 minutes or 6 roads away. Parental responsibility. I mentioned to you earlier, I'm a son of an economic migrant Jamaican father. We didn't have anything called the naughty step. I don't know what that was. I wish I did. But the point is, you as a parent or grandparent, you've been disempowered by technology. What I want you to do, anyone over 25, 30, I want you to remember what it was like when you got grounded. That bedroom, what it looked like, what it smelled like. You were fortunate if you had your dinner that night. What does grounding look like in 2014? You have to plug out the router, turn off the WhatsApp, take off the Snapchat, I can't keep up with them. Log off the face, look what's happened. Where's the manual that comes with parenting in 2014? How are you going to bypass technology in order that you can establish your parenting skills? A statement of Jesse Jackson. Do you know what I did a month ago? As a person who loves technology, but a month ago what I did, I started picking up conkers. Because for me, they weren't for me, but the process, we have to start thinking about how we can empower our youth and our children with enough knowledge to use technology correctly, but not get lost in it. And those of you in here know what that means. Some of us, and we have to say this, some of us as adults, as parents, as uncles, as grandparents, we're not present. So we need a counter-narrative. Now, you usually hear this around October, Black History Month, but just by the way, you're allowed to quote African proverbs outside of Black History. Okay. But we know it takes a village to raise a child, but what if there's no village? And mom's a single parent, and she's holding down 2 jobs, and she's in a 1-bedroom flat with her son in the middle of that estate. 2 African proverbs in a row. But this is the one, this is the ultimate one. It's all over my social media arm. It's my mantra. If young people aren't initiated into village, they will burn it down to feel its warmth. Am I lying? Not that long ago. And finally, the good news is that not every young person's involved. The good news is that there's people out there who will punch through. There's people out there who will go to some of the schools that are underachieving, but they will achieve. But let's not make youth violence the dominant culture. Everyone has a role to play. Thank you.